I'm Tina Ngātai. I'm a descendant of the owners of the marae behind us, Papaiuru, and I'm the regional manager for the Māori trustee for what's called the Waiariki region, which includes the whole of the Rotorua area. My office administers about 60 blocks affected by the lake's water quality issue. People feel very spiritually bound to their land. It's ancestral, it's been handed down. Culturally, they see it as part of their connection to where they're from. The flip side of that is we also want to get some benefits to assist our people.
I'm Roku Mihinui. I'm the CEO of the Te Aroha Lakes Trust. The connection between Te Aroha, the lakes and the general environment were lessons that were handed down through the generations. So the lakes themselves aren't just a body of water that are used for recreational purpose and providing food, although they were at the time. Their connection with our people from the past. The Te Aroha Lakes Trust is about maintaining that mana or that tino rangatiratanga or that authority relationship that Te Aroha have with the lakes to ensure that any land usage that will impact on the quality of the water is redressed. Because the Te Aroha Lakes Trust, if you like, had quite an ethical or even moral responsibility in terms of the lake's water quality, they were bound to come in conflict with people who were more focused on their ability to sustain their livelihood economically. When I look at some of the bigger land corporations and land blocks that have had the resources to develop to their fullest extent, Ngāti Whakaue is one of the examples I think of immediately. Once this issue of lakes water quality was brought to everyone's attention, they were the first to step forward and say, we recognise the issue that we have here and we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is and make the changes to the land use.
My name's Richard Valance, and I was the Chief Executive of Ngāti Whakaue Tribal Lands. Ngāti Whakaue owns 5 farms around the lakes, around Lake Rotorua in particular. It's very valuable land, it's very expensive land, and it's essential for Ngāti Whakaue that it's able to use its land to advantage, but clearly it's essential to the community and the Ngāti Whakaue that it doesn't damage the lakes on the other hand. So there's been a real tension there that we've had to try and solve. This 1,500 hectare block of land is a very interesting case in point of an opportunity to find multiple solutions to a problem and increase their wealth at the same time. And what they've done is that they've switched from dairy farming to lamb fattening, and it just so happens that the economics of that aren't as bad as everyone thinks. The second thing was to look at alternative crops, and it's put in a truffle farm. Time will tell just how good that is, but the hope is that that'll be very, very profitable indeed. The other big element is subdivision. The owners have agreed to look at taking some land out of farming altogether and put it into high-value real estate.
The majority of blocks we look after are reasonably small, and in the past have been used mainly leasing to a third party. So we got rentals from the land. That changed within the last 10 years. People started to farm the land themselves.
For those Māori land blocks that were only achieving or getting to the stage where they were able to look at full utilisation of the land, one of the biggest impactors of recent years has been the introduction of Rule 11. This has been a huge hindrance to them to advance their land usage.
If you say, righto, we've got to reduce the carrying capacity of this catchment of this lake by 25%, the rule book is a very blunt way of doing it.
When we first went into the nutrient trading project, and I was on the panel, it literally took me several months to see it as something that could benefit Māori. And that's only because Rule 11 has said no more, and nutrient trading offers an opportunity to actually do more.
When you come to sort of putting the thing into gear and setting off, the first step will be people being confident in the cap that's set, and that is the limit, and everyone's got to operate down here inside it. And so this, arriving at that point is going to be very, very important. The bit that we're allowed to play with, how do you allocate that across thousands of hectares of land?
I also struggle with the allowances per type of land usage. And if you look at it specifically at the current Māori land use around the lakes, it's either forestry or it's dry stock. So how would you compare that with a dairy farm that has quite intensive high use on a smaller area? Is it about that intensive land usage, or is it about the acreage, or is it about the effects of the land use per se?
Now those guys at the top end, well, they're there because the government encouraged them to put on all the fertiliser, and they did all that, and they did that very well, and that's great. Some others, the government didn't give them their land back until about 15 years ago, give them control of their land, and so to now penalise them for government policy is just as rough. One of the good things about the market will be that it'll increase the incentive for farming industry to invest in finding solutions, because if they can save me spending $100,000 a year on nitrogen units, I'll be delighted.
I mean, there's strategies you can do on the land. You can put in wetlands. I mean, a lot of farmers in the old days took away the wetlands, just trying to put more land into pasture, and that meant that the land wasn't breaking down the nutrients as much. So putting areas back into wetlands assists you to increase your stocking numbers a little bit.
We think that there are solutions that lie in the animal biology. Ag Research has done a lot of research, and we now know that you can alter the amount of nitrogen coming out the back end of animals by changing feed and things like that. The other thing we think where there's a great big area of as yet unresearched and undeveloped technology is in the topsoil. And I think part of the solution for New Zealand farming around, pastoral farming around waterways in general, is going to turn out to be less fertiliser, more massaging the soil. I think if we can move back towards more organically oriented farming, a higher, greener product, that means that we can farm at a slightly lower level of intensity and make just as much money.
The other significant project that has been introduced is the floating wetlands. And basically all it is a flotation system that's set up in plastic drums. They contain soils and specific plants. Those root systems extract nutrients from the water and therefore help purify the water.
Māori land is governed by Te Ture Whenua Māori Act, which places some restrictions on what we can and can't do with our land.
We want our strategic plans and all our...
The difference with Māori landowners, of course, is because of the multiple ownership. Then they need the agreement of the membership to be able to make a lot of those land use changes.
So what are these barriers? These barriers include EBOP, Rule 11. This restricts land use options in the Rotoehu Lakes catchment. That's where our farm is. And also the proposed nutrient trading scheme.
So there's a disjunct between what we can do with our lands to provide the best return, and it's not just about financial return, it's also the social impacts that financial return can have for our people.
The nutrient trading has a lot of potential for Māori, but it also has a lot of fishhooks that need to be ironed out and discussed before we accept it fully.
I think the difficulties have to do with measurement. Very difficult to trade something you can't measure. If I think that by making these land use changes that Ngāti Whakaui's made, from its dairy farm to lamb fattening and to an intensive crop and to some subdivision, if we can't measure that saving, I can't sell it.
One of the risks, I think, in the trading game is that every land block get awarded their points and then sell them too quickly, on-sell them to the dairy farmer down the road, because that could mean they jeopardise future use of their own land for future generations.
I'm mindful that the particularly dairy farming and dry stock farming is very volatile industry, and it's subject to a lot of factors, and one, of course, the significant one being the climate. So in times of poor production, how does that going to impact this nutrient trading on those particular farm users?
The weather, market prices, farming technologies, People see those issues as part of the market. The issue will be integrity, and where it'll fall to bits if bureaucracy suddenly changes the goalposts. What will solve the problem is if all the players work together, and the only way to do that is collaboration and willing participation and confidence and trust. And that last word, trust, is probably the single most important one of the lot.
There's a saying that's becoming more and more common. Ka ora te wai, ka ora te whenua. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. If the water is healthy, then the whenua or the land is healthy. If the land or the whenua is healthy, then the people are healthy.